What is going on, fellow Washington Commander fans? Welcome to Taking Command with the one and only Josh Taylor here on my YouTube channel. Now, the draft is finally over. It was a long build-up. It seemed like it took forever, and then a blink of an eye and the draft is over. As everyone knows, this is my favorite time of the year. This is my favorite sporting event. I'll take this over the Super Bowl any year, mostly because I haven't seen Washington in the Super Bowl. But still, just even not as a Washington fan, just as a football fan in general, this is the part I love the most about football, is looking into these prospects and just breaking down film, scouting stuff out, and then projections as well. And the draft really tells us a lot about that. So in this episode, I'm going to be talking a little bit about Washington's recap of their draft picks and what all happened in our draft. Now, I'll do more in-depth breakdowns and videos on each pick in the next coming weeks as we, prepare for rookie mini camps and, of course, training camp in July. But for this episode, I'm just going to give my thoughts, my reaction, just really some quick tidbits about these players and just how I feel about this draft class, because a lot of people have different opinions on the draft class. And as always, subscribe to the channel, like the video if you enjoy what you see, comment what you think, what you disagree with. I love to hear y'all's opinions because, like I said, we all think something different. But guys, let's take command. Now, before we get started, if you were at the draft party, I had such a good time. If I said hey to you, or if you said hey to me, appreciate everyone just, being part of a fan base again. It's been since the season ended that I've seen fans and been to FedEx Field. So it's just great to be back. And then just a huge thank you to Washington Commander, the PR team, the media team, and just everything they did for us. Content creators having the opportunity to get together, but then also sit down with guys like Jonathan Allen, Doug Williams, Kendall Fuller, Logan Thomas, just to name a few. And I've already started dropping some of those interviews. So after this video, check those out as well. Like I said, just some quick sit downs. Actually talked to Jonathan Allen about one of the picks that we actually ended up taking. But it was a great time if you were there. If you weren't, you should have been there because you missed out. But the season's coming up. We'll see everyone at training camp in July. Now, let's get into these draft picks, because before the draft even started, Mayhew even said himself, we start out with 6 picks, but it's not how we're going to finish this draft. And of course, everyone's like, all right, of course, trading back in this draft especially is ideal. Now you need a trade partner. A little did we know it'd be a record-setting amount of trades, not only just in like the first round, but the entire draft. Everyone wanted to trade up, trade back. There was plenty of suitors out there if you wanted to. Now, of course, Washington took advantage of that. And for me, this whole offseason, if you watch my tapes and mock drafts, there's been 2 teams linked to Washington that I broke down pretty closely this entire offseason, and that was the New Orleans Saints and the Pittsburgh Steelers. And sure enough, the Saints called our phones. I was at the stadium waiting for pick 11. I was walking down the stairs to get onto the field, getting ready for that pick. And then I look up and boom, it says, we are trading with the Saints. And I was like, but there's Chris Olave on the board, Kyle Hamilton on the board. There's no way Washington is not picking 2 of those guys, because we've been heavily linked to those guys this entire process. But sure enough, the Saints move up to 11 and they send us picks 16, 98, and 120 in exchange. So right off the bat, Mayhew was right. We pick up my third for pick 98 and then pick 120 in the 4th. So he wasn't lying. We were going to get more picks all along, and they've been transparent about that. We were like, well, let's see if someone actually wants to move up that far. And of course, the New Orleans Saints select Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State, who we've broken down a ton as Washington fans, and we've been, excited for him. We knew he'd be an option for us, but sure enough, Washington trades back. And they select at pick 16 another wide receiver that I've been in love with for many years now. And that is Jahan Dotson out of Penn State. Now, Jahan Dotson is a fast, just freak athlete when it comes to going up and getting a ball. You see the highlights, especially the one against Shaun Wade at Ohio State, where he's just bodying him with one hand, and then the right hand goes up and just catches it, and being able to bring it down. Even the catch before that was phenomenal, where he's in traffic and somehow comes up with it with 2 guys to set up that next play. But the thing about Jahan Dotson, he wasn't the big name that us Washington fans, some of us weren't too, familiar with. It wasn't the Garrett Wilson, the Jamison Williams, the Drake London, the Chris Olave, that smoke that built up before the draft that we were expecting. So I think just everything that we heard and then just watching and being familiar with these guys set certain expectations for us fans going into the draft. I think that's why a lot of fans weren't too, keen about trading back with Chris Olave there on the board. But then also they don't really know too much about Jahan Dotson to say, like, I love this pick. And I think, a lot of fans are going to come around. If you've watched college football, if you know Jahan Dotson, and, as a Washington fan, I think you're excited about this pick because you love to see what he brings to this team. Now, with Jahan Dotson, like I said, he's phenomenal after the catch. He had the lowest drop rate in the entire class. I think it's like 1.3% in 2021. I think his career drop rate was like 5%, somewhere around there. So it's really low. But last year, he had the lowest drop rate of this class. So for me, Jahan Dotson is a home run. Now, he played with limited quarterback play, started out with McSorley at Penn State, and then Sean Clifford came up right after that. I feel like those two guys were hit or miss. Sometimes they make some great throws, hit him in stride for these deep passes. That's where you see him excelling. But then there's also times where he's making something out of nothing, or he's taking a short catch and he's running it upfield. He's gliding. He knows how to use his speed, but also knows the angles he needs to take. And he runs great routes. He gets separation on his cuts. He has clean breaks. That's what I want to see, especially in a smaller wide receiver. Now, he did have like this 1 year of just a lot of production last season. And then before that, he shared the field with KJ Hamler. And I'm going to go more in depth with Jahan Dotson. But just overlooking this and just my overall thoughts with Jahan, I love this pick. And I think the more Washington fans, watch his film and then see him on this offense and see how things click, I think Washington fans are going to come along with this pick and be like, all right, I'm not mad at all. And it honestly doesn't really matter what Chris Olave does with the Saints, because you have to imagine, like, it's different schemes, different fits, different offenses. Like, would he have that same success here? I think Chris Olave would be phenomenal here with how he does. But Chris Olave was one of the middle-ranked wide receivers with yards after the catch. And that's something that Jahan Dotson, for me, is, way better at with Chris Olave. And then once again, he has these sure hands. And the only thing I'm really worried about is his small size, how he does against press. But we'll see. Now, a lot of people say they think he's going to play in the slot. Some say, because he's smaller, that's where he's going to play. But actually, if you take a look at his routes that he ran and where he lined up, he actually spent 1,148 times outside and only 225 times was he actually in the slot for Penn State. So I'm interested to see what this offense does with him. I think you can line him up in the slot where he's just getting vertical and he's just cutting up the middle of the field. And I think he had 7 touchdowns against zone coverage last year, which was the most in Big Ten out of any wide receiver. So just knowing to sit in these empty spaces in the zone, knowing where to go, and then just, kind of just rip the defense apart in the middle of the field. It's what he specializes in. So you wanted a wide receiver. We got a wide receiver. But in addition to that, we got extra picks in a deep draft, which I think we've definitely seen. And that's when it comes to one of the most controversial picks for Washington. My guy, I'm not going to be biased on this one just because 2 of our guys played at Alabama. I should have took this flag down, but I'm going to be dead honest with y'all. Phidarian Mathis. And this is a guy I actually talked to Jonathan Allen about at the draft party. Called him Phidarius Mathis. Completely butchered his name just because I was in shock to be talking to Jonathan Allen, someone I watched in high school, college, and now he plays on my favorite team, and he's a leader on this team. So I was a little shook, not going to lie. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm a fan first before anything. Dapped him up. I was cool before he even got on the camera. But with Mathis, I knew coming into this that it was an option. I saw us have meetings with a guy like a Perion Winfrey, who was, projected to go early second, middle second, maybe even sneak into the first. Some people had, which I thought that was way too high. He had a phenomenal Senior Bowl, but we had many meetings with him. I think we had about 2 meetings with him, formal meetings at our facility. So for me, like, I knew interior defensive lineman or defensive tackle was always an option for us. And it came, especially after Matt Einitis and Tim Settle. And that's something I really want to talk about because I see a lot of stuff on Twitter that bothers me. People are saying that we refuse to match Tim Settle's offer, which is completely false because it was absolutely reasonable But in free agency, Tim Settle has the option to do whatever he wants. He could go play for the USFL if he wants to. It doesn't matter. Tim Settle, at the end of the day, has final word. And he did not like his role here, being a rotation guy. He wanted more snaps, which he's going to get in Buffalo. But then also, he's playing on the Bills. He is very likely to win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years. Absolutely the favorites to win a Super Bowl, if not this year coming up. So I don't blame him at all. We can't be mad at Tim Settle. Do you see how fired up he was at their press conference where he's yelling? Like, Tim Settle generally wanted to be a Buffalo Bill, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we can't sit here and say that Washington did not try to keep Tim Settle, because at the end of the day, we don't know what that contract looked like. It was a very favorable contract. Like I'm almost guaranteeing you that we at least matched his offer, if not offered him more, because it was a generous contract that Buffalo gave him. It wasn't too outrageous for a guy like him. Played a decent amount of snaps, but made the most of every snap that he had on the field for Washington. Now, with Matt Einitis, yes, that was completely us. And to be honest with you, I'm still not mad at it. Matt Einitis was getting paid way too much for a guy that rotated in. Yes, he played, I want to say, probably 45% of snaps last year, just rotating in, but then also playing, 3 guys on the line if we do like a 5-2 defense. But still and he had some injuries. But for me, we had to get younger, and we had to get, cheaper, which is not a bad thing. We had this talk 2 years ago. Said, guys, we're not going to be able to pay all of these first-round draft picks on this field at the same time. We knew this time was going to come, and yet we did not want to accept it now that it's here. We pick up Montez Sweat's 5th-year option. Chase Young is going to get paid eventually. Jonathan Allen, he's the long-term guy here. Daron Payne, we still don't know what that looks like. We don't even know if we can pay Daron Payne yet. Washington fans wanted us to keep Matt Einitis on his current contract. I don't see it. I don't think it's realistic to think about. Now look at our depth. We go into this draft with 0 depth pretty much behind Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne. People are saying, just get a guy in the 5th, 6th. We could have waited. Possibly. But with Big Phil, that's what I call him. I just know him by Big Phil. We don't call him Fedarian at Alabama. Big Phil Mathis. The thing with Big Phil is he is an impactful guy on and off the field. He is a leader. Ron is a personality guy, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, we were projected to possibly get a guy like Perrion Winfrey at 47, who ended up slipping and going to the Browns, I believe, a little bit later. So what's the difference between getting a Perrion Winfrey at 47 or a Phil Mathis at 47? And this is where trading back allows us the opportunity to get an impact guy at 47 to play an interior D-line, fill a need. It is a genuine need right now. Because like I said, Matt and I did play a good amount of snaps, but we couldn't pay a rotation guy that much continuously. And like I said, he did have some injuries. So for me, I have no problem with it. And then after I saw the picks that come up that I'm going to talk about, I don't have a problem with it even more. I was completely okay with it. I don't care if this guy played at Auburn, one of my least favorite school. If it is a good player and he fills a need like that, Jonathan Allen loves this guy. Daron Payne is like his big brother. The continuity we're going to have on that line is so important. But like I said, not even just personality-wise, but Big Phil, he can play 0 tech, 1, 2, 3, doesn't matter. He can play nose tackle. He can line up over top of the center and wreak havoc. What he does so well is he has that leverage. He bull rushes the quarterback. He had 9 sacks last year. I'm seeing a lot of people saying he's not, pass rush savvy. No, he's not as good as Jonathan Allen, but they both had 9 sacks last year. He's not going to, spin move you and, do the swims, and he's not the best at fighting hands, but the guy flat out moves SEC offensive linemen. He pushes you back. He gets leverage. He creates more opportunities for Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and the guys on our edge. He creates opportunities for our linebackers to come up. Christian Harris, a linebacker at Alabama, his pass rushing ability got a lot better with Big Phil, being his main starting as his senior season. Phil Mathis got the most starts. Before that, he rotated and stuff like that, but he was a sure starter his senior season. And the pass rush was phenomenal for Alabama last year. Not even just Will Anderson, being this freak athlete on the edge. But what I saw with Phidarian Mathis was a 6'4", 310 guy who is a forever, not just a year-long captain. He is a forever captain. There is a walk of champions when you get to Tuscaloosa, and there is a path that all the players walk up to on game day. It's my favorite part of game days at Alabama. And there's handprints in the ground there for forever. His was one of them that just will be there. He left a legacy on Alabama. And I can't, speak about that enough, just the kind of guy he is on and off the field. But on the field, people get behind him. Like I said, but just the presence that he brings on the line, double teams. I mean, you see this guy handle it. He makes everyone around him better as well, and that's what I care about. 12 tackles for loss last year. Like I said, 9 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 2 pass deflections, getting his hand up and still creating havoc in a passing play, even if he doesn't get to the quarterback, but also 6 quarterback hits last year. So I'm excited about this pick. Like I said, I don't care if it was Perion Winfrey, a guy who didn't go to Alabama. I just know that getting to the quarterback is something that we live and die by. And you want to help out the secondary. You want to help out the linebackers. Get to the quarterback. And I think Big Phil's going to be able to get to the quarterback more than people really think so. They're just calling him kind of like a run stuffer. But I think he uses his strength to just push guys back, get them off of their leverage, and just get up under their pads and push them back and get to the quarterback. And if he's not, it's helping out someone else get there. So I'm excited about this pick. I think more Washington fans will, come along with it once the season starts. Like I said, running that 5-2 defense where there's 5 guys on the line. Can you imagine Chase Young, Jonathan Allen, Phil Mathis in the middle, Dron Payne, and then Montez Sweat? Like, for me, that is something to get excited about. So I'm not mad about where it's at. If he balls out, there's no such thing as a reach. If he has more of an impact than a guy in the 4th or 5th could, then I'm happy with it. And of course, we kept this thing going with pick 98, which we got from the Saints. My guy, Brian Robinson, another Alabama guy, running back, physical, just hard nose. He runs angry, but he gives 100% every single time the ball is in his hands. It doesn't matter. But also, another thing that's important, even when the ball isn't in his hands and he's picking up the blitz and pass protection, protecting his quarterback. For me, Brian Robinson was one of the best pass protecting running backs in this entire draft. And I go back to that Cincinnati game against Darian Beavers, Majai Sanders, Brian Cook coming from the secondary for Cincinnati. That pass rush was phenomenal for Cincinnati all season long. There were so many plays where Brian Robinson was picking up the blitz, getting guys out of the way, creating more opportunities for Bryce Young to get the ball out of his hands. And then he ran for 200 yards on Cincinnati in that game alone. If you want to hear a crazy stat, this is just in the playoffs. Running backs in the playoffs this past season, the most yards rushing. Brian Robinson had 204 rushing yards, and he had 127 after contact. The next running back with yardage in the playoffs was Jerome Ford, another good running back in this draft class, only had 77 yards. So that's with Hassan Haskins, that's Corum, that's James Cook, Zamir White, that's Jerome Ford. B-Rob had 204 yards, and he had 127 of those after contact. The first guy doesn't get him down. The second one doesn't get him down. His contact balance, his ability to just bounce off of guys and stay upright. He runs low. He just has that compact body to where he can just lay guys out. And that's what I love about him. But something that really kills running backs, and you look at it, you're like, all right, he was at Alabama for 5 years. He waited his turn. He was that Tuscaloosa guy. He wanted to wait for his opportunity. I respect him on that. You have all these running backs that we've had, and then he waited behind, guys like Najee Harris, Damian Harris, guys that are in the league right now, balling out, like Derrick Henry. There's plenty of guys. He was there for 5 years. But the thing I love the most about that, I'm glad he was there for 5 years. He was in an Alabama program, learning how to play football and doing damn well last year in his major year. But he only had, compared to some other guys who have a lot more, only had 545 carries. And like I said, last year was 1,343 yards on 271 rushes for 14 touchdowns. So 545 carries. There's still a lot of tread on the tires. You talk about running backs in the NFL right now. You run them until there's no tread left. You don't pay them. You ship them off somewhere and say, all right, we're going to draft another running back, or we're just going to pick one up somewhere that's young, doesn't have the wear and tear on them. So Breece Hall, top running back in the draft class, had 718 rushes in only 3 years. So it just shows you, compared to 5 years of Brian Robinson with 545 carries, Breece Hall had 718 in 3 years. Isaiah Spiller had just as much as Brian Robinson in 3 years with 541. So it just gives you the context of, people like, oh, we only had 1 year of production. I mean, I think if he would have ran more in the few years before that, there's just so many running backs at Alabama. Same thing that goes to Georgia. They just have 5 stars all over the place. But when he had the opportunity, he stepped up. He had production. 1,343 rushing yards. Like I said, 14 touchdowns with 271 carries. But he still has those healthy legs. He hasn't been beat up a ton. And I think this is a great pick. Antonio Gibson, love him to death, but he's not a true running back. We don't have a true running back on this team. Same with J.D. McKissick. He's that third down back for us. But so for me, it's just having that guy. And he also, the very important thing about Brian Robinson is last year he had 0 fumbles. Something that we all know Gibson struggles with greatly is fumbling the ball. So I like a guy that can wear down a defense. There's nothing worse than a physical running back just pounding down on a defense over and over and over. 5 yards, 8 yards, 12 yards, first down, do it again. There's nothing worse on a defense than a running back that's going to wear you down like this, but then also just bust out big plays. Once he sees that hole, it's like he just hits that other gear. He doesn't have that high-end top speed where, he's just going to get away from guys. But when he finds that hole, he's going to just get in there, get out quick, tear guys up on the way, put some guys on their butt, and run them over and lower his pads. And he's going to take some to the crib. Like I don't see why people didn't think that running back was in need for us, honestly. I love Gibson. Like I said, I don't think this really hurts his value, but I think this puts pressure on Antonio Gibson. You can't fumble the ball. And when you're fumbling the ball, we have Brian Robinson who's going to come in, and we know he's going to take care of the ball. We have a short yardage back, but he can also, I think, first down, second down, I think Brian Robinson would still be an option. So, goal line, I'm putting Brian Robinson in before I put Antonio Gibson in. That's just me personally. It's not the Alabama in me. I promise I'm not going to be biased in this. I'm just giving my honest takes on all of these picks. So, B-Rob led all SEC running backs, 79 forced missed tackles. He's only 23 years old. Like I said, he was at Alabama for 5 years, but still has a lot of tread on the tires, and that's what I like the most about a running back. Then after that, pick 113, which we already had. We knew DB was a need in this draft. I've been telling people linebacker is not as big of a need as the fans think it is. Been saying that for a month or two now. You're not going to see us drafting a linebacker. And if we get one, it's not going to be anywhere early. It's going to be way late. I was thinking after the 5th. I said, that money backer, that Buffalo role that we're sick of hearing about, that hybrid position is the biggest need when we're coming to, the secondary behind the defensive line. That's the biggest need. And that's when we went out and got Percy Butler out of Louisiana Lafayette. Been there a couple times. Good little stadium. But he's honestly someone that I didn't get to watch too much tape of. Now, last night, I was honestly up to about 3 a.m., watched about 2.5 games before I started falling asleep watching his games. And what stood out to me is he did play in a couple spots. Sometimes I saw him as a free safety. Sometimes I saw him in strong safety. Sometimes I saw him as that box safety up near the line of scrimmage, getting in on runs. So he does have that versatility. And Ron and Mayhew have already come out and said that he's going to get reps in that Buffalo role. So for me, that says like Landon Collins coming back. Yes, according to a lot of people, it is a possibility that he could come back. But it's not as much of a stress on this team if he doesn't. You have a guy like Percy Butler, who you get in the 4th round, fast, ran a 4.36 40, physical guy. He's still raw. He still has a lot of things he needs to work on technique-wise. One thing that jumped out to me was sometimes he doesn't read routes too well. Sometimes he doesn't handle like fakes or like when a wide receiver is cutting up field, something I noticed in the Texas game. Sometimes he just doesn't get the best angles. But when he does, he is a force. He's a physical guy. He'll lay the hammer on you in a heartbeat. But he's quick to get to the ball. So that's what I liked about him. And he's an excellent special teams player. That's something that jumped out right away for me as well. So I think this guy could be a genuine free safety. I forgot who it was. Chris Sims said that this was his top free safety of the entire draft, which is wild to me because I honestly have heard of this guy a little bit, just because I looked at ULL before the college football season started. I broke them down a little bit, but I didn't get to watch him as much this year as I wanted to. But he is a name that I kind of heard about, but I want to go back and watch more of his tapes before I go too in depth on Percy Butler. But for me, it fills in that role that Washington was looking for. Ron speaks highly of this guy. His athleticism just jumps out on tape for Washington. And I think that's what really drew them in. So, yes, we have a pure free safety now. We have a guy who can play in that box and also play that hybrid role. Big, lengthy guy who can cover like tight ends, cover some more physical wide receivers. So that's what I noticed right away so far that jumped out to me with Percy Butler. We knew it was a need, and we filled that need. So I'm not mad at that. It wasn't one of the picks involved with the trade. So that's just something we just went with pick 113. Now, we did trade 120 and 189 to the Washington Panthers, was what it seems like. As much as we trade with them and interact with them, they're always involved with the process somehow. But we got picks 144 and 149. So essentially, we flipped pick 120 that we got from the Saints and 189, which is a sixth, for 2/5 that we didn't have coming into the draft. We did not have a fifth round pick, which is something that was hurting us. And then it was two fifths that were close together, though. Two valuable fifth round picks. I could care less about, 120 was nice, but moving in from sixth and, giving away our sixth round draft picks, we didn't have one anymore, and coming up and getting 2 picks in the fifth turned out to be huge for us. And why? It's because a guy like Sam Howell fell to us at 144, which for me was mind blowing. So that was the big trend in this draft, was quarterbacks falling farther than we thought they were going to. And if you've been following me on anything, you know that I love Sam Howell. Sam Howell is the one guy with Malik Willis I spent the most time with at the Senior Bowl. Talked to him pretty much every day at the Senior Bowl. Got to interview him on the field. I had a breakfast with him. I mean, it was crazy. Like, I was starstruck, to be honest with you, because I love the kind of person Sam Howell is off the field. Big man in his faith, as am I. That's something that's important to me. That's something that he's not afraid to show. For me, he is a strong man. There's nothing wrong with that. You want strong leaders, especially at the quarterback position. That's something I look for. I want a guy that people just corral around. And North Carolina loves this guy. The fan base loves this guy. Mac Brown loves this guy, but his teammates love this guy. And on the field, he does some magical things. He, to me, has the best deep ball accuracy and arm strength of the entire draft. And that popped out on tape many times for me. And then, of course, the production. He's been the most consistent quarterback out of any of these quarterbacks in the draft. Those 3 years, there is not 1 year he had a bad year in anything. And he even evolved his game into more of a running quarterback because he had to. One thing I talked to him about, I've got a video. I might upload it on Twitter or something. Follow me at Josh Taylor FB, by the way. One thing I talked to him about was, in 2021, you lost Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, Daz Newsome, De'Ami Brown, which we have now, which he loves him, by the way. It's something I did upload, was him talking about De'Ami. I told him you lost 72% of all of your production last season as a passer, not just even the running game. I mean, you lost almost all of your production as a running team with Michael Carter and Javonte Williams leaving. But I said, what was that like? Like, what did you learn about yourself? And he said, he learned that what kind of leader he was. Getting these young guys to, get caught up to speed, to corral around each other, create that team atmosphere, create that locker room. Josh Downs was his wide receiver 3 back in 2020. In 2021, he became the 4th ever wide receiver to have over 100 catches in a single season. The 4th ever in ACC history. It's wild. Josh Downs, his draft stock went way up this past season. He's going to be a fun wide receiver to watch. But just the things that Sam Howell did. He said there was times where I forced too much. There was some stupid throws I made, at the ending of the Tech game. But man, he was just beat up the whole game. He was running for his life. He had a newer looking offensive line. He had some big, big key guys come back. But just Ty Chandler, who transferred from Tennessee, had a great year as well. But he had new wide receivers who needed to step up and take that big leap to fill in for Diami Brown and Daz Newsome. But then also he had a brand new running back that he's never played before. And it's just, there's a lot that goes into that. And no, they didn't have a great season as a team. But still, when I watch the tape and I look at the stats for Sam Howell, for me, for what he had to go through, for what he conquered as a quarterback and as a leader, I think he had a great season. I learned a lot about Sam Howell last season, and he said he learned a lot about himself too. And he's pretty damn proud of what he did through that. Yes, he wishes they would have, won the national championship and so on, like go undefeated. But just still being able to do what he did, I loved it. A guy like him falling in the 5th round, there is no value on that. Like you can't put a price tag on getting someone who can possibly be the future quarterback of your team, which I have full faith that he could be. Not saying he is, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but his upside, his ceiling, for me, I had him as the 3rd best quarterback in this draft. I think for me, Pickett's always been the safest guy. But I think Sam Howell has more upside than Kenny Pickett. I think he has more to offer than Desmond Ridder. For me, he was right up there with Malik Willis with the athleticism, being able to avoid tackles, being able to be mobile in a mobile quarterback-driven league, but still just the arm talent, the velocity that he throws the ball with, it's out of this world. So for me, I've loved to see what Sam Howell could do in this offense. Having Diami Brown back. I know Diami's hype. Like he knows I have a quarterback that can throw a deep ball. But just I'm ecstatic about this pick. Everyone knows I am a huge Sam Howell fan. I'm going to show it. I'm going to support the heck out of this guy. I'm going to support the heck out of Carson Wentz. There is no quarterback controversy at all. There's a couple mechanics Sam Howell needs to work on with his footwork, with his release. He pats the ball before he throws, like after his windup. There's a couple things, I've talked to Malik's quarterback coach, Sean McAvoy. I've been in close contact with him. He said he's had some work with some other quarterbacks, and, Sam Howell's one that I really talked to him about. And he said, yeah, there's absolutely some things to work on. Obviously, all these quarterbacks have something to work on. But for me, I feel good about it being more of a mechanic thing. We saw the transition that Josh Allen made as a Wyoming quarterback to a Buffalo Bill quarterback. It took a couple of years. It took about 2 or 3 years for Josh Allen to really come around. So for me, I'm fine with Sam Howell sitting a year or two behind Carson Wentz, learning from him. They're not similar. They have similar traits. They both can run more than you think they can. They're both more mobile than we believe they are. I think they both throw a great deep ball. But I think him sitting behind Carson Wentz, just learning from him, working on these mechanics with Coach Zampese, I think it's going to do a lot of good for Sam. So I'm excited to see what he can be. I love what he is right now, but I'm more excited about what Sam Howell can look like in the future. Like I said, getting at him in the 5th round, for me, that made trading back all worth it. But then we also add one of the best receiving tight ends in the draft at pick 149 with Cole Turner, someone who I also got to talk to at the Senior Bowl, paid close attention to this guy. This is someone I predicted coming to Washington back in like January. I said, keep a close eye on Cole Turner, with the Air Coryell vertical offense. Now that we have, I didn't even know we had a vertical, throwing quarterback at the time. I predicted the same how to come here too. Didn't think it would be this late. I didn't think we'd get Carson Wentz. I thought it would just be strictly just Sam Howell. But still, having a quarterback that can throw it deep to a guy like him. Now, he's not going to put his hand in the dirt too much and, block. That's not what he does. At least that's not what he did at Nevada. He said he believes he can, of course. But I think there will be times where he has to, but I don't think that's at all the plan with him. I think you're going to see him more outside like, Kittle does or Kelsey does. He's a receiving nightmare for linebackers. And that's what you want. That's what you want to use him as. You don't want to do things outside of his comfort zone or what he's meant to do. For me, he has some of the best hands out of any of the tight ends in this draft. Tall, lengthy, big frame guy. But you see his catch radius. He transitioned from wide receiver to tight end, and it shows when he plays. He is just a giant wide receiver who had a natural transition to that tight end spot. So like I said, Nevada didn't ask him to, block too often, and he didn't have to with, Carson Strong. That was just a air raid, throw heavy kind of offense. He didn't need to. Him and Romeo Doubs were just catching dimes from Carson Strong while they were at Nevada. But I love this pick by him. I think that he's going to bring that special receiving, threat for us that's greatly needed. We don't know how healthy Logan Thomas is. I kind of talked to him. He said he's ahead of schedule. Hope is to play week 1, to be ready and cleared by week 1 to play. But you don't know. You don't want to rush things. So you want someone who can come in, big red zone threat, throw it high. He can go up and go get it. But then also middle of the field, being able to run vertical routes in the middle of the field, stretch that defense wide open, put a lot of stress on that secondary. And for me, that's what Cole Turner just does. That's what he is natural at, being able to go out there, get passes, just adding another offensive weapon with Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel when he gets healthy. You have the options with John Bates and Logan Thomas, and then also Brian Robinson running the ball, just loading up an offense. We added great weapons in this draft. That's something that just jumped out to me right away. And then also we add to the offensive line. Chris Paul's a guy I knew because he was at the Senior Bowl. So I caught up on his tape out of Tulsa. Obviously, his teammate went the first round to the Cowboys. But with Chris Paul, he started football kind of late. Was excellent at it. Started caring about it a lot more. Saw how good he was at it. Started out with guard. Ended up as a tackle at Tulsa. But for me, he's played everywhere pretty much except center. He's played left guard, left tackle, right tackle. He finished out at right tackle. I want to say last year he played both spots for Tulsa on the outside. So for me, he can play anywhere. So having that versatility, which is what Washington really preaches, but also having a guy like he is projected to be a developmental starting guard. I thought him at this pick, and everyone that I've talked to that I, high regards in the draft community, they're like, man, Chris Paul, pick 230 is a phenomenal value. And, you want to talk about reaching with Phil or a running back, say what you want. It doesn't matter. Getting this kind of player on the offensive line in the 7th round, I think Chris Paul could eventually start. Like, I think he could honestly give Wes Schweitzer a run for his money and that right guard spot eventually. Like, I'm that high on Chris Paul. I love Chris Paul's game. He's not the most, the fastest technique guy, but he has strong hands, strong body. He uses his leverage, and he can hold guys off in that guard spot. And then when you're playing the guard spot, you have help at center and you have help at tackle with guys you're playing. So it's much different than just being lined up at tackle and you have this whole empty space beside you, but then one guy on your other side. It's a whole game changer. So I think he can play everywhere. I feel good about him settling down more into that guard spot on the offensive line. And then last pick, 240, Christian Holmes, another guy I didn't get to watch film of yet. Haven't broke down too much. Like I said, with last night, I just focused on Percy Butler, but things that I've read. And then just a couple like highlights here and there I've seen with Christian Holmes is, for me, he's just, he's a hard hitting, physical. He has longer arms, which I love. He started out at Missouri, I believe, then transferred to Oklahoma State. Didn't have as many interceptions or turnovers as people would like. Sometimes he's a little too aggressive, too handsy, which, you have to watch to the next level because they're throwing penalties on everything. But he's just a physical guy. And we needed some depth to help at the corner spot. We saw times, last year, the year before that, seems like there's always injuries at that corner spot and, depth pieces having to come in. And Ben St. Juste, guy who plays inside and outside, with his injuries, we just don't know what all's going on, how he's doing. But you can never have too much depth at corner in a pass-driven league. So I'm excited to break down his game, look more into it. This is where we found our beloved Cam Curl. So you just never know what can come. A stat that I saw yesterday that was surprising to me was 66% of all players that played in the league last year came in day 3 or undrafted. So these day 3 guys, people are like, oh, we got a tight end, we got a guard, we got another corner. Like, I'll see what happens. Like, no, like I'm fully invested in watching these guys, like, especially Sam Howell. So I'm excited about this draft class. I've seen so many downers. I beg you, don't be that fan that's just, and you can be upset about something, but don't write some players off. Don't write these guys off before they even hit the field. That's what bothers me. And don't base your rankings off of other stuff. I've seen people say Phil Mathis was projected to go in the early second. I saw many people, even before the draft. Todd McShay was saying Christian Harris, John Mechie, Phil Mathis are all projected to go early second. Like there's guys in the media community and the draft community that I've seen, I've watched, have said him and Brian Robinson both went where they projected. And if we were to wait for the next pick at pick 98, there's no way that Phil would have been there. Could we have gotten another guy? Possibly. I don't think they'll have as much of an impact as big Phil Mathis will. But guys, like I said, I want to hear what y'all think, good or bad. I don't care. I want to hear y'all's opinion, what y'all think about this draft class. And we've got some time before rookie minicamp kicks off. And like I said, training camp's going to be a movie this year. I cannot wait. I've already got a Jahan Dotson jersey coming in the mail. But I appreciate y'all tuning into this video. Like, subscribe, tune in to some good ones coming up. I got some guests coming on because I'm going to break down even more in depth on these draft picks. I'm going to do them individually so we can really get to know the players, but try to reach out to some of these guys and get them on. Like I said, I've talked to Cole Turner and Sam Howell already at the Senior Bowl. So I'll reach out to them, see if I can get them to come on to the show, which would be super hype. Like I said, guys, check out those videos. I had quick sit downs with Jonathan Allen, Logan Thomas, Kendall Fuller. All of those are uploaded on the channel. So stay tuned. Got some good things cooking up this season on Taking Command with Josh Taylor. See y'all later.